Here comes Flagg and throwing it down.
Turn the L's into W's.
Right down the lane for the slam.
At this point, Cooper Flagg is already a shoo-in for the top overall pick of the 2025 NBA draft. He's arguably already the best player in college basketball at just 18 years old. That means he's undoubtedly the player everyone in the NBA has been observing the past college season. Of course, tanking teams are more likely to land Flagg in the draft than any of the playoff contenders. So here are the top 5 NBA teams that might be drafting Flagg next June. Washington Wizards. The Wizards have been tanking for a while already, fielding talented but questionable players like Jordan Poole. They don't have any young players to build around other than Alex Sarr, who's clearly been struggling with his offense despite his defensive upside. Of course, Washington doesn't have any tradable assets they could use to land a big name in the offseason, and no superstar wants to go to this franchise as a free agent. So, as it stands, the Wizards are going to be one of the teams vying for a chance to draft Cooper Flagg. Flagg is what you'd call a connector because he can pass, defend, hustle, and do almost everything at near LeBron James levels. So having him on the Wizards would be great because he can connect the talents of this team's top scorers.
Proctor to Flagg. Layup goes.
Poole and the other guys like Sarr, Coulibaly, and Carrington would have to focus on hitting their shots and performing their roles, knowing that Flagg already has the other areas of the game covered. He's also a great playmaking wing, allowing him to make the other players' lives easier. And he doesn't even demand a lot of touches and shots. Pairing Flagg with Sarr is the scariest part. These two players can form one of the best defensive front courts in the league. Sarr is a legit defensive asset, already blocking his fair share of shots as a rookie despite his offensive struggles as a young rookie. Flagg is great at playing the passing lanes to get steals and recovering to the weak side to block shots. Imagine these two players switching and helping out on defense using their versatility and athleticism. It's also nice to see a guy named Flagg playing for the nation's capital. That would solidify his status as the next Captain America of the NBA. Then again, the Wizards haven't been the best at handling talent. This has been one of the sorriest franchises in the league because they've handed out bad contracts and have mishandled injuries. So if you want to see Flagg excelling, maybe Washington isn't the best place for him to go. New Orleans Pelicans. The New Orleans Pelicans were supposed to compete for a playoff spot after adding more talent during the offseason. But the problem was that this team just couldn't stay healthy. The Pelicans' best players, Zion Williamson, CJ McCollum, Brandon Ingram, and DeJounte Murray, all missed a lot of games. As scrappy as this team has always been, scrappiness can only get you so far in a very talented NBA landscape. As the season progressed, the Pelicans finally gave up on their chances of making the playoffs, ultimately sitting near the bottom of the Western Conference standings. That's such a shame given that this team has a ton of talent.
Showtime.
But that only means they're in a good position to land the number 1 overall pick in the 2025 draft. The Pelicans moved on from Brandon Ingram by trading him during the season. That means they may be opening the wing spot for Cooper Flagg. If that's the case, we could see Flagg running the floor together with Zion, forming an athletic dunking tandem. That is, of course, if they're willing to keep Williamson for another season. That's the thing about the Pelicans. They have a lot of assets they could use to trade up in the draft in case they don't land the number 1 overall pick. Players like Trey Murphy, McCollum, Murray, and Williamson are still good enough to find suitors around the league. The Pelicans could use any of those assets to either trade up in the draft or surround Flagg with complementary players who fit his style. And if they somehow land the top pick, this team could be dangerous from the get-go. San Antonio Spurs. The Spurs are in an interesting situation. Before the latter part of the regular season, they were in the play-in tournament race. The Chris Paul and Harrison Barnes acquisitions helped the team improve. But the huge strides that Victor Wembanyama made since his rookie season were what helped this team improve from last year. You also can't deny how Stephon Castle has been playing well as a rookie. Meanwhile, the De'Aaron Fox trade also gave the team another backcourt scoring option. But after Wemby went down with a season-ending blood clot, the Spurs suddenly found themselves losing more and more games. They're not one of the worst teams in the league, but they're still close to the bottom of the Western Conference standings. So, even if they don't have the best chance of landing the top overall pick, there's still a chance.
Harrison Barnes launching the three. Got it!
Drafting Cooper Flagg could change the complexion of this team and turn it into an instant contender. They were already good with Wemby, Castle, Fox, and Vassell playing together. Adding someone like Flagg could complete this lineup. He may be a good scorer in college, but Flagg's game revolves around his do-it-all skills. That means you can rely on him to score, rebound, pass, and defend. With someone like him doing the dirty work and giving the Spurs a Swiss Army knife player at the wing, this team could finally return to championship form. Then again, the Spurs are deep at the wing and forward spots. They have Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson, Jeremy Shohan, and Harrison Barnes. So if San Antonio has a chance to acquire a possible game-changing star, the Spurs might need to move one of their wings and forwards to make way for Cooper Flagg. This could mean possible trades and moves that could help open up a front court spot for Flagg and allow the Spurs to acquire new assets they could play alongside Cooper and Wemby. Utah Jazz. The Utah Jazz are likely going to finish at the bottom of the Western Conference standings by May, and that's perfectly fine for a team that doesn't even have a ton of talent outside of Lauri Markkanen. Speaking of Markkanen, he's the only guy on this team capable of consistently putting points on the board. All of the other guys on this team are inconsistent. But not even Markkanen is the type of player you would say could carry a franchise to the future. He's more like a good number 2 option, but not a player you could expect to be the face of an organization. That's why the Jazz needs a player they know has the talent and skills to take this team to the next level. This is where Cooper Flagg comes in. He's not yet a polished scorer, but he's got all the skills you need for a guy who could connect everyone on this roster. He can set Markkanen and the other good scorers up for open looks, especially because this team lacks a capable playmaker. He can defend the wings, help out on defense, and switch out on almost any position on the floor to complement the defensive abilities of Walker Kessler. The Jazz need a new face of the franchise because Markkanen can't do it all. In fact, if Flagg becomes a true superstar, Utah could rebuild around him and make Lauri expendable, trading him for new assets and players who could help Flagg turn this franchise around. The possibilities are essentially endless if the Jazz could get a guy like him. There's also the fact that Flagg seems to have a good head on his shoulders, considering he grew up in a small town. Utah doesn't have the glitz and glamour that the bigger teams have, but Salt Lake City would be a good place to play if you're a guy who's used to slowing things down in smaller towns. Charlotte Hornets. The Charlotte Hornets are probably only second to the Washington Wizards in terms of bad luck. This team could not find its traction because of injuries to its best players. LaMelo Ball, Brandon Miller, and Mark Williams missed a lot of games. They could have competed for a play-in tournament spot had they been healthy, but the Hornets just couldn't field their top guys, eventually struggling to win games the entire season. This is where it gets interesting, because we know that the Hornets haven't been a well-run organization. They struggle to win games, make the playoffs, and land top stars through trades or free agency. Of course, as deep as basketball may be in the heart of North Carolina, that doesn't mean that the Hornets will automatically have a rabid fan base.
No hurry at all.
Now, if they do land the top overall pick and draft Cooper Flagg, it makes things interesting. Flagg played for Duke in college, and we know Duke is only an hour and a half away from Charlotte. That means that everyone who followed him during his time in Duke will have the opportunity to watch him grow in the NBA as a member of the Hornets. This could help revitalize the Hornets fan base. As for the Hornets, they could very well start fresh with Flagg as one of their cornerstones. LaMelo is one of the best point guards in the world when healthy, but that is only true when he's available. He hasn't been healthy the past 2 seasons, making him more and more expendable for the Hornets. Charlotte also has other assets like Mark Williams, who they were ready to trade for Dalton Knecht this season had the trade not been rescinded. So that means the Hornets could try to start a new rebuild phase with Flagg and Miller leading the way. Let's just hope he won't get the injury bug that's been biting the other Hornets players.